This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and finally, thanks for your patience. This is the HP Spectre x360 15-inch gem cut, otherwise known as the very late 2018, really early 2019 model, with a 6-core CPU inside, just like a gaming laptop would have, or a mobile workstation, and NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti Max-Q graphics. So you're talking about the power of a Dell XPS 15 inside of here in a very thin and light convertible design that supports a pen, has a 4K display. Wow, we're going to look at it now. All right, homies. Sorry, I couldn't resist it. HP has made it, in some ways, very easy for you to pick out one of these models. There's not a whole lot of configurations, for example. If you're picking the one with the Intel 8th Gen Coffee Lake 45 watt 6-core i7-8750H CPU and the NVIDIA GTX 1050 Ti Max-Q graphics, the only thing you can change when you build to order is how much RAM and how large the SSD is in it. The rest of it is all standard. That's the processor, that's the GPU, that's it. It has a 4K UHD display, it's glossy, it's a touchscreen, and it supports HP's Active Pen, which uses n-trig technology, which they've been doing forever with the Spectres, and yay, the pen is in the box. You have your choice of 2 colors, the usual dark ash silver, as they call it. I've never known why they call it that. It's kind of a gunmetal-y brown color. It's very classy, it's nice, it has kind of bronzy accents on it, or what we have, which is the new Poseidon blue color, which is not as bright a blue as the 13-inch model. We reviewed that one too, so if you're also interested in the smaller model, check our channel for that review. Probably because as they scaled it up bigger, maybe they thought the more subtle, kind of closer to a deep navy, almost black, looked better with it. So you have your choice of either color. The laptop is well equipped, as we've come to expect from a Spectre, and this is not a cheap product. It starts at $1,599, and that we'll call it $1,600, right? And that's with 8 gigs of RAM. Probably nobody's going to order it like that, and a 256 gig M.2 NVMe SSD. So if you want it with 16 gigs of RAM, and you do, and a 512 gig SSD, and you probably do, then you're looking at more like $1,799. Call it $1,800. Now, HP does have sales on their website, so hold out for one of those if you're on a tight budget. So far, this model has not been picked up by US retailers. Best Buy carries the other version of this that's been out for some time, which has quad-core Ultrabook CPUs instead in much lower-end NVIDIA MX150 graphics. So, yeah. And do you remember we also reviewed several months ago, they came out with an AMD Vega version of it. That one's going to eventually go away. So we'll just have the lower-end MX150 with an Ultrabook CPU, and this one with the mobile workstation CPU and the beefier graphics inside. We have 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports on this, and it's full 4 lanes, so good speeds there. And a few legacy ports, not a whole lot. You can see the port listing on screen. That said, it does cover, you know, the core things. You do have HDMI, you do have a USB-A port, all is not lost, and a micro SD card slot too. As ever, it's relatively light. Convertibles typically are a little bit heavier than conventional laptops. It's 4.78 pounds, which is 2.13 kilograms. Not too bad. Well under an inch thick. You can see those measurements on screen. In terms of security and biometrics, it has both a Windows Hello IR camera up top, and it has a fingerprint scanner on the keyboard deck. HP said they asked people and they preferred it on the keyboard deck. For a while they tried putting it on the side. There it is. And for those of you who are paranoid about your webcam, it has a physical webcam kill switch on the side, just like the 13-inch Spectre x360 gem cut that we reviewed. So it's a little hardware switch, and when you flick it, it turns off the camera. It doesn't disable microphones, it just disables the camera, for those of you who are wondering. Keyboard on this is pretty much the same as the previous generation Spectre. We have obviously a very new looking design here with the nice cut off edges, hence the gem cut name. Still a very good keyboard. It's not super deep travel, it's not thick ThinkPad, cushy kind of thing, but it's a very nice keyboard to type on, and it has a number pad on as well. I'm on the fence as to whether I like number pads on 15-inch laptops, but that's totally a matter of personal preference. HP still is not using Microsoft Precision trackpads. I know some of you boycott anything that isn't. It's a very good Synaptics trackpad, so it's not exactly the end of the world, and it's certainly big, and it's roomy, and it supports gestures and all that sort of thing. The display on this, like I said, you have only one option, which is 4K UHD glossy touchscreen, supports the pen. So it's a very good display, and it's typical of what HP has been doing with the Spectre x360s for some time, which is they cover the full sRGB color gamut used on the web, but they don't go super wide gamut like Dell does with the XPS 15 4K display option and the XPS 15 2-in-1. So if you're looking for super wide gamut for print, or just because it's darn pretty with extra color saturation, that's something that you're just not going to get here. But that said, that's probably one of the reasons why they end up usually being a few $100s cheaper than the competing Dell models that they're going after. But for those of you who really do want really amazing color, HP has said there will be an OLED option. It's nice to see OLED displays coming back. One of the things that does hold them back from market sometimes is the fact that they do typically offer shorter battery life, which HP said would be the case. So keep that in mind. Burn-in, a little bit of a concern. I'm not too worried about that with laptops, but yeah, it should be certainly luscious to look at. So how about the internals on this? You know, I'm not very happy about this. None of the reviewers who have gotten HP review learners are going to be happy about this, probably. But HP actually asked us to not open it up and take it apart, probably in part because they did the same thing they did with the 13-inch Spectre x360 in previous generations. They have rubber strips along the bottom, which is to elevate it a little bit and make it grippy on the desk. But the screws, most of them, except all but two, are under that strip. And when you peel it off, the adhesive really gets pretty destroyed. In previous generations, you could peel off those rubber strips and not destroy the adhesive, so there's that. So anyway, I'll just tell you about what's inside. It has two fans, which is not to be unexpected, one for the CPU, one for the GPU. From the pictures I've seen, it looks like it has two pretty beefy heat pipes on it, and RAM is soldered on board. It used to be with the Spectre x360 15 inches, we had RAM slots. Now it's soldered on board. There is an M.2 SSD slot, and again, it ships with NVMe SSDs. Anything from 256 to 512 to a terabyte to 2 terabyte, depending on how much you want to pay, you can order it that way. So that makes it extra important, by the way. Get the 16 gigs of RAM model because you can't upgrade it later. It uses standard Intel 9560 AC Wi-Fi, which is a perfectly good Wi-Fi card. So what you really want to know about: heat, noise, heat. Because Spectres have always been toasty creatures, even with much less capable CPUs and GPUs inside, and even the competing XPS 15 and the 15 2-in-1, they run pretty hot and they tend to thermal throttle a lot. Because when you're talking about something that is this thin, it's really hard to offer enough cooling for it. And when you've got metal that close on the thin bottom to the CPU and the GPU, you're going to feel some heat. So using this, even though it's winter time right now here in the United States, I can tell you, doing average productivity work, the palm rest area gets warm, which feels kind of nice in the winter, not hot, and the bottom gets warm. It doesn't get burning hot. If you're going to be playing Apex Legends, it'll get hot. Now, in terms of CPU temperatures, say you're doing Photoshop with a bunch of layers, and you'll see me drawing, and you can do photo editing, obviously. The core temperatures, if it's not plugged into AC, will be in the 50s and the 60s. That's great. That's fine. GPU usually is never a problem with NVIDIA, not a problem here either in terms of thermal temperatures. If you have it plugged in and you're pushing it hard because you are doing something like playing Apex Legends or Fortnite, or you're doing 4K video editing in Premiere, or you're doing 3D video renders, yes, those core temperatures will go up there, particularly if you're playing games or you're doing 3D renders. It will thermal throttle. That's just the nature of the beast. You'll go up into the low 90s for the centigrade for the core temperatures, and there'll be some throttling. This is the price we pay with all very thin and light mobile workstation / gaming laptop level performance models right now. In terms of the actual real-world use, though, it performs very well. It may throttle some, but it's not like you're going to notice it a whole lot in practical use. So if we run Cinebench over and over again, the numbers will drop about 10% after the 5th run, and the core temperatures will be in the upper 80s to low 90s. So when you're talking about something that has 6 cores and a lot of performance, 10% would be nice not to lose it, but it's not bad either. When it comes to throttling compared to the Dell XPS 15, it actually does better. I don't know what HP has done, but with the 13 and the 15-inch Spectre x360s, they have worked some cooling magic here. You will hear the fans, and when you first get it, you'll hear them coming on and off at seemingly random times because Windows is doing updates and indexing and all that stuff. But after that, if I'm streaming Amazon Prime or Netflix, the fans don't come on. If I'm working on Photoshop, I'll hear the fans cutting in and out occasionally, but not very loud. If you're playing Apex Legends, again, or doing Blender renders, yes, you'll hear the fans. They're not super huge. They're not going to get room-filling loud, but you will hear them. In terms of performance compared to the one with the quad-core ultra-big CPU and the much lower-end graphics, well, this one does run circles around it. As for which one you buy, it really depends on what you need to do. If you are expecting to play occasional Apex Legends or Fortnite or whatever it is, if you are doing 3D rendering, if you're taking classes in college for that sort of thing, if you are doing 4K video editing like we do with relative frequency, yeah, then you're going to want to get the more performant one. But if you spend your day in Word and Excel and browsing the web and maybe occasionally making 1080p videos from your drone footage for your family and all that sort of thing, and maybe Minecraft is about as exciting as you get with games, then you could certainly do fine with the quad-core model that has MX150 graphics. So the pen on this, I'm not going to spend too long on it because it's the same n-trig technology that HP has been using for several years with the Spectre x360 line. Same experience pretty much as on the 13-inch that we just reviewed. It supports 4,096 levels of pressure sensitivity, and the pen in the box is not the tilt model. It's the one with the quadruple A battery inside. There is optionally available the USB-C rechargeable tilt pen, which is a real pain in the butt. Sorry to say, HP, but it's complicated to set it up to get that tilt working, and it tends to discharge its battery, so thank God it is rechargeable. Anyway, after that little rant. As a competent digitizer, this is not something you would, as a professional artist, that would be your first pick. This is true of all n-trig digitizers, in my opinion. The lines are not as silky and perfect compared to Wacom EMR, but that is not available in many laptops anymore. Samsung Notebook 9s are pretty much it, and Notebook 9 pens, and Wacom's own Mobile Studio Pro, which is not by any means a normal laptop design. So what can you do? It certainly is good enough, though, to do some art on the fly. I mean, I can draw my strange little hot dog man without a problem with this. Palm rejection on it, not so good. That's why I'm wearing my poverty glove with the fingers cut off so I can draw with it. It's a little bit worse for me because I'm left-handed. I tend to rest my hand on the screen a little more than you might if you're right-handed. For note-taking, it's perfectly great. You still might have occasional palm rejection whoopsies where align vectors, but it's great for note-taking. Happily, the days of meek HP Spectre speakers are long gone. They have quad speakers on this and a dedicated audio amplifier. So the speaker audio is actually quite good. You can actually go all the way up to 100% volume and not hear distortion on it. That doesn't mean it's the loudest laptop you've ever heard or it has bass that's going to tickle your toes, but it sounds pretty darn good for a 15-inch laptop. So the Spectre x360 15-inch doesn't have a lot of direct competitors, that is convertibles with pens with high-end CPUs, be it 45-watt 4-core or 6-core CPUs. That would be the Lenovo ThinkPad X1 Extreme, which is a fine laptop of it in its own right, but my God, does it look different or what? Very different design aesthetic. So it depends if you want that kind of flashy, even gorgeous HP look or the understated Lenovo look. The Lenovo does have a higher gamut 4K display, which stands in its favor, and a deeper travel keyboard, but the thermals aren't quite as good, surprisingly, as the Spectres. If you want a smackdown, let me know in the comments with that. The other one would be the Dell XPS 15 2-in-1, which is starting to age. It really directly competed with the AMD Vega version of the Spectre x360 15-inch. In fact, we did do a smackdown between those. And the XPS 15 is using a quad-core 45-watt, sort of last-generation CPU with AMD Vega graphics instead. In terms of horsepower, it's not as fast. In terms of thermals, it's equally as challenged. The Vega drivers were never all that, worked on in conjunction with Intel, but it does have a gorgeous display on it. But as a detractor, it does have that maglev keyboard, which is kind of like a weirder version of a MacBook Pro keyboard. So how about battery life? Does that suck? Not so much, actually, given what we have here. We have an 84 watt-hour battery. That's a pretty good capacity battery, considering the fact that that's about what we see in a 15-inch Razer Blade, which has a much more powerful GPU inside. And we have a 135-watt charger. It's a barrel pin connector charger. You can use USB-C charger. I tried the Dell XPS 15 2-in-1's charger, which is a USB-C based 135-watt charger. That worked fine too. I think they went with the barrel pin because it's hard to find a high wattage USB-C charger sufficient to charge this, and because it frees up your Thunderbolt 3 ports and /USB-C for other things. At any rate, battery life with this, if you're doing moderate productivity work, the usual streaming video, 150 nits of brightness, that's our standard test case scenario, about 7 hours. And that's pretty good for something with this level of performance and a 4K display. Maybe that's why they made the display go up to about 300 nits and not higher, because if it was even brighter, your battery life would be even worse. You're pushing it harder because you just might on the road, maybe you are doing some video editing or doing your CAD homework or something like that. Of course, you're going to get shorter run times. You might get 5.5, you might get 6, sort of thing. So for those of you who have been watching our videos over the years and the many generations of Spectre x360s I've reviewed, you know I used to call the Spectre x360 Bob, best of the best. So, you know, over the years it's been getting harder for the x360 because there's been a lot of fine competition out there, but I would say that HP has actually achieved true Bobness with the 15-inch model because there's not much else out there like this in terms of it's a 360-degree 15-inch convertible with a pen. It has the same CPU you'd get on a gaming laptop or a mobile workstation. It has very competent dedicated graphics with that 1050 Ti Max-Q inside. It's gorgeous to look at, too. So, I mean, the only thing I can complain about with this one is the fact that it's really annoying to open it up. Life could be worse. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.